Hi, how's it going? Nice to meet you. My name is Trent Manning. I guess I should start with while I was in Texas, I was going to school at Southern Careers Technology for pharmacy tech. Well, actually, let me start with how I got to Texas in the first place. I had a friend that I went to middle school with, and we kept in touch throughout our adolescent years. She would always say how she always had high hopes for me, but I guess I just never reached my full potential at that time, being a product of my environment. So, sitting home, I just had my daughter a couple months back, and life's just becoming a day by day. I have a job, and it's just what is really gonna happen with my life? What am I gonna become? And she would always say, "Hey, you can come down here, figure it out, stay with me till you do." And I would always decline, obviously. But one day I woke up on the side of the bed that just said to not go back to sleep on that side of the bed. So I called her, asked her, "Hey, is that offer still on the table?" And she said, "Yeah." So I think the next day, probably 2 days after, I was at Logan Airport, Boston International, and had a ticket ready to go straight to Texas. I mean, as you can see, I'm sitting here in front of you now, not wearing a white lab coat because that didn't really pan out. I finished school successfully, but sitting behind a desk, filling prescriptions, and sitting in a CVS somewhere, taking prescriptions and putting pills in a bottle wasn't really how I see my life to be. So I always had a thing for community development education process, and I couldn't ignore that it needed more people, more advocates to be a part of it. But that's just how I've always been. I'm a hands-on learner, and in the moment, you can feel what exactly you want out of that situation. I can tell if it's meaningful to me. Actually, I remember when I took carpentry class program for summer in Providence. I believe I was 18 at the time, fresh out of high school situation, and it came with a stipend. It came. We learned a bunch of good tricks to the trade. Ended up with a tool belt. Built a garage, still there to this day, on the side of a church. And I ended up working for a company officially for about a week or two. And then it's just, you know, you gotta have passion in the things you do. And I remember someone saying, if you don't love your job, then it's just a little harder to get up in the morning and get dressed and get ready for it. So that always stuck with me. And what gets me out to bed these days is knowing that what I'm trying to do and what I plan on doing is to help my community, and that they need more advocates and people who care in general. A story that reminds me of something about caring is when I was also in Texas. I didn't have the means to go there straightly for pharmacy tech. That's something that came along. I actually ended up working at Walmart overnight for about 2 weeks in. Got the job working overnight. I loved it. Best time of my life. I ended up actually didn't know that not Walmart, that Texas had tornadoes, something I wasn't aware of. But I found out that night. There was a small one, nothing too serious because the locals didn't really pay it any mind. But it was strong enough to knock out the lights and all the electricity in our plaza and a couple blocks too as well. And so now we have a pitch black Walmart, and customers scared, trying to find their way. And at that point, as just a human, not even just my employee status, for me to find all the customers and get them to the front. I see on the employee side, they don't want you to steal anything or take anything in the darkness. But for me, it was personally, you got someone that's scared, that's in probably Walmart alone, wasn't expecting none of that. And just for me to show up with a flashlight to go, hey, let me help you get to where you gotta go. And that's how I see myself with this job, is I just want to show up in someone's life with a flashlight and help them through the darkness, help them get to the path that they need for a better, successful future.